Fantastic. Okay. Does everyone hear me all right? Um, Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Just to get it out of the way, this is going to be a presentation where I'm hoping to get a good amount of feedback. I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Anytime you have a question or have an answer to a question that I pose, feel free to put it right there in the chat, and Hadia will read it out to me, and hopefully we will be able to answer any of those. Um, I guess I just want to welcome you, those of you who are new to this meeting for Women Who Code Quality Time. My name is Zenzi. I am located in Delaware, but I am the tech lead for QA for Women Who Code DFW, just because this happens to be a consistent quality meeting that I attend. I started attending a year ago, and the chance came up to be of service, and I gladly accepted. It's a great organization, a great place to spend your time and share about your journey in the tech field generally, whether you are a quality assurance professional or not. So, welcome everybody. This is the first in our series on gaining technical confidence. We had a meeting last month where I asked folks, what do you need help with? Where are you in your career? What kind of issues do you see with feeling confident as you step out in the world, in the tech field? And folks overwhelmingly said interviewing is a big fear, it's a big obstacle, and the behavioral interviews uh, really leave people feeling uh, anxious, frustrated, uh, all of the things. So I said, let's work on that first, and we will be working on more things in this realm and as far as technical confidence as the year goes on. So just to get started, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to do just a quick 20 or 20-ish minute primer on behavioral interviews and how to ace them, or at least improve your standing so that you can make it to that next realm of interviewing, because these days it's about like 6 rounds. So I'm going to share my screen now, and everyone, if you just let me know if you can see that presentation. Awesome, awesome. I'm just going to switch slides just to make sure that it's working correctly. Did the slide switch? Perfect. Okay, going back. So as I said, we're going to go through this in roughly 20 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but I'm going to try to move forward as quickly as possible so that we can make sure that we get a chance to see some behavioral interviews in action. So our objectives today are to, first of all, define what a behavioral interview is, to decide why we need to improve our skills, and to discuss some key steps to preparing for and acing that interview. So why should you listen to me? Like I said, I'm a tech lead. I'm not a manager. So this is why. I started my career as an executive assistant and moved on to people management at a company called Instacart. During that time, I interviewed a lot of people. And in about 2020, I decided to make a career change and move into tech. I was able to go to boot camp. I was the first person in my boot camp class to get a permanent position. Um, During the time of my boot camp, I also was able to get an apprenticeship and get a fellowship, which gave me the confidence and the know-how to get that first job. And I did all of that by acing my behavioral interviews. When I was interviewed for my first job, the CEO called me and he said, that was my favorite behavioral interview that I've ever done. And he watched it back because he wasn't there that day. And basically, folks at my job said, could you distill your process and share it with our juniors? Because one of the folks at my job is manager for a group called Portland Junior Devs. So I was able to start distilling my process and hopefully give people steps that they need that are useful and actionable that they can put into practice right away to get better at behavioral interviews. So first of all, before you even get an interview, before you take that first call, I have things that I feel you should be doing before first contact. The first is put that phone on do not disturb. I know that it seems counterintuitive because, of course, people are calling for a job. You absolutely want to be available and take those calls and book the job, but you want to be prepared. And every contact that you have with a position is a behavioral interview. That means the phone screen, reaching out on LinkedIn, um, speaking to a manager, sending an email for a request to meet. All of those are behavioral interviews. Even your whiteboard interview is a behavioral interview because they want to see how you work under pressure. They want to see how you communicate, how you collaborate, how you might fit in with your coworkers. So you absolutely want to be prepared. Put the phone on do not disturb. They will leave a message. When they leave a message, they're going to tell you who they are, what company they are, and what position they're calling you about. So that gives you time to jog your memory if you've been applying to dozens of companies over the last few weeks. Now you're going to go back and you're going to have time to be prepared and make sure that when you reach out to them, you can make a favorable impression. The second thing falls right in line with that. Save all of your job descriptions as a PDF. A lot of times after the company gets enough folks involved and interested in a position, they will take down that job posting and you won't have access to it anymore. So if it had important information like a salary range, any type of information about duties, anything that you needed and you haven't been paying attention or you just didn't have it, it's gone from you at that point. So when you apply, especially if you're someone like me and you don't like keeping like one of those big spreadsheets of jobs and what you did, you're going to save it with the company name, the title, and the date so that even if you don't keep any other type of filing, you can look into your saved documents and you can pull up that job description for preparation and for research at a different time. Also, it gives you an idea about other types of companies you might want to look for or types of positions you like. So you can always review those and see what appealed to you about the job as well. So it's good information to keep and it doesn't take up a lot of space on your computer. The next thing you want to do is you want to set the stage. If you're going to be interviewing online or you're going to be doing phone screens, you need to have a space that is visually appealing and quiet and where you won't be distracted. So when I initially started interviewing, I was in the middle, we were in the middle of the pandemic. I was interviewing in my bedroom. I had to kind of shift my camera a little bit to get a better angle so you couldn't see my bed. I put some pictures behind me. And I also checked to make sure that I had great reception in my room, that you could hear me if I was on a phone call. All of those things that can make communication a challenge. I wanted to make sure that I eliminated as many of those distractions as possible. As you can see today, I'm wearing a wired headset. That's so that there is no feedback or limits the feedback that could be received. And also you want to test your equipment. So if Their whiteboarding interview software is different than what you've used before. They're using Teams instead of Google Meets or Zoom. You want to just give it a try. You don't want to be there right at that time and you click into Zoom and oh, you need the software download. You need to give permissions on your computer to for them to hear you and you to hear them. That's not what you need at a time where you're already stressed out. So you're definitely going to set the stage and be as prepared as possible. And then the last thing you want to do is practice your elevator pitch. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with the idea of an elevator pitch. It's a short introduction that you use for interviews and network. Sometimes people who have businesses also have their business forward elevator pitch. So it should be something 60 to 90 seconds where you explain who you are, what you do, maybe a sentence about your journey, and if you're using it for interviews, you want to talk about what you're looking for in your next opportunity. So you just might want to say, hello, my name's Zenzi Ali. I'm a career changer, but I have a long career that where I was a people manager. I switched to tech because it was something that I enjoyed after working for a tech firm for several years. And now I am looking for a job where I can use my communication skills and my people management skills and uphold quality within my organization. That's just, I don't know, something I just made up, but something that puts it all together for you, just so that when they ask you to tell me a little bit about yourself, you're not talking about, I don't know, your dog or what, just anything that comes to mind. You want to have 3 or 4 sentences where you can really share who you are and what you do. Especially if you are a career pivoter, you want to make sure that you have a few things about yourself that actually create a case for alignment with the types of jobs that you're currently looking for. So if it's a job in product management, okay, talk a little bit about what appeals to you about product management, how you've done things within that job description in previous careers, anything that aligns you. Just really make sure that you make the case for yourself right away. The other things that you can do are just include why you think you're a great candidate. Hopefully, if this is like your dream job or at least a job you really want, you've given that a little bit of thought, and that's another sentence that you can include. So they've left the message. Now, what are you going to do? Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to host a little mini celebration for yourself, 5 minutes or 10 minutes to say, it's working. My process is working. I've applied to 100 jobs. I've finally gotten a call back. It lets you know that your process is working. And if you've been tweaking your resume or your cover letter, now you know you're getting traction and you're closer to giving people what they want so that you're starting to see some feedback. So that's thing one. Then when you're celebrating internally, now you're going to brag a little bit. So if you have a community that you're a part of, whether it's Women Who Code or Ministry of Testing or another testing community or Discord or a Slack community, you are going to send a message within their community channel and say, hey, have an interview next week. Everybody wish me luck. I'm really excited about this job. That's for a few reasons. First of all, you want to be active within those communities at all times anyway. Second of all, you never know who's in the community. They also might be hiring. And as they see you consistently saying that you're interviewing, you're preparing for interviews, you're talking, they're going to keep you in mind. They're going to remember that. And it might give them a reason to reach out to you and speak to you a little bit about something that may be coming up at their company. Also, I think of it as kind of what I call the hitchhiker rule. Um, Folks will help a hitchhiker that are walking towards a direction more than they're going to help somebody who's standing still. So if they see you making moves and you're always busy and you're doing a lot, they are more likely to lend a support or lend a recommendation than if they've never seen you on a channel and you just pop into their DMs. So it's definitely worth discussing. Uh, then you're going to tweak your pitch for the audience. So you've been practicing that elevator pitch. Now it's time for you to maybe tweak it just a little bit, because now you have somebody on the reel, you have somebody on the hook, and you can really make it personal and effective. And then you're going to review that job description that you saved. So let's talk a little bit about job descriptions in the chat. And if anybody, if one of my co-moderators can kind of read anything that we get, uh, tell me a little bit about what you look for in a job description. What are you glancing at if you take a minute to look before you apply? Talk to me a little bit about that.
I know when I'm applying, one of the things I look at is like where the company is and who they are. And then I also like, as soon as I see the job description, I kind of like look for important words and things I think that relate to me. And then I go back and research company just in case, because I'd rather
Right.
know. I like, and then I see if maybe my network knows anybody who works there, because that's always the fastest way to find out, do you actually want to work there or not? So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's see here.
Um,
Oh, okay, sorry.
no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I saw something in the chat, and at first I didn't understand it, but then I realized the question was for you and not for me. So in the chat, yes, Melissa has added, are there any keywords in this job description that I have up here? I know it's a little bit small. I've zoomed in on the next slide a little bit, but for now I'm going to leave the entire description up. This is taken from GitLab, by the way, and I found this on Ada. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ada, but it's a fantastic job board, and they have a lot of QA positions as well if you're also a QA professional. I'm sorry, someone else was speaking.
Yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and read what was said in the chat. We've got some great answers here. Linda said that they look at the requirements, areas of ownership, location, benefits. Someone else mentioned that they look for a visa if they need to work there. And then I wanted to add that whenever I look at, the job descriptions, I look at under the requirements, some keywords. I think someone mentioned that earlier. And I actually go back and change my resume to match those keywords because I have a friend who's a technical recruiter. And I actually didn't know this until I was reaching out and was job searching, is that they actually have recruiters have like some softwares with companies and stuff like that where they literally outsource resumes that match 50% or more of the job description. So that's where I got that tip from.
Yeah, and that is absolutely smart. And one thing, as we continue to think about behavioral interviews, remember that your resume is going to touch a lot of hands and not everybody's going to read it closely. So just because it's on your resume doesn't mean that you shouldn't mention it during your interview. So you can absolutely update your resume, change to those keywords, but remember to pipe up with any minded or not like minded, any correlating jobs or experience that you have, so that the folks that are on your interview panel also have access to that in their memory instead of just having to go by a piece of paper that they may not have looked at very closely. Yes, we had a lot of good suggestions there. Looking at the place, for me, remote is key. So I always check for remote. And like you said, any responsibilities, requirements. And another great thing that Hadia said was 50% of the requirements. So you don't have to have everything. And I would say, even if you don't feel like you have even 50%, apply anyway. Apply anyway. There were people in my boot camp who were just graduating. They're applying for mid-level positions. I didn't have the confidence, but they did. And you never know what folks are looking for. So don't count yourself out. You might as well throw your hat in the ring. And let's say you do great on the behavioral interview, but they feel like your skills aren't quite what they need at that time. They might say, you know, we really like you. We can bring you in for this junior position. We can bring you in over here and train you for this position that you want. So you absolutely never want to cut yourself off at the knees, especially if you like the company. So there's that. So as we look at this, um, I look at all of those things too. But once I get the call back, I'm looking at things a little bit differently. Um, yes, requirements and responsibilities, but because I'm a career changer specifically, I'm looking for keywords that match what I consider my enduring skills. Some people call them soft skills, but they're not soft for people who don't have them. They're tough, and some people cannot learn these skills. So if you have enduring skills within your wheelhouse that match what they need, you should absolutely make sure that you're highlighting that during a behavioral interview. So as I look at this, I saw quite a few words that stuck out to me. And also feel free to say anything that stuck out to you, and throw that in the chat as well. Hadia, feel free to interrupt me. Yes, applicant tracking systems. There's also computer programs that will scan your resume with the job description and see how much they match. Don't be afraid to use those as well. Let's see. Yes, and that's true of women. A lot of women do not apply, and they don't have the confidence to apply. Man, woman, non-binary, just apply. Everybody get out there, go for it. It's your time. Why not? Um, yes,
Um, I wanted to
exactly.
say, I wanted to say that's a great a point right there, because I think the position that I'm in currently, I actually was not even considering like taking the position. And it's just the way that everything worked out. I ended up really liking it and actually taking it. But needless to say, just you never know what you can qualify for, and you never know what kind of skill set you have versus the majority, right? Like I always think that with everything, and then the way that the technological world is moving, I feel as if technological skills can be taught, and it's the behavioral skills that really set you aside from someone that's already taken the same boot camp, and has the same portfolio and has the same 3 projects of a tic-tac-toe, or I'm not saying QA related things 'cause I'm not a QA person, but just a full stack developer. So I think really just having those extra things that really set you aside from the person sitting next to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Ashley made a point about this job description about their self-learning and just on learning in general. So that speaks, first of all, to their values, which we'll get into a little bit more as we dissect, but also something that most of us have done. If you're in tech, you've probably taught yourself a great deal. So that's definitely something worth highlighting. But in this job description, for me, now that I've got the callback, the theoretical callback, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the word product intelligence. Now, what is that? Do you know? Some people do not. So you absolutely want to Google whatever that is to make sure that you know what it is, because that's the department you're interviewing for. You're not just interviewing for the software engineer and test position, you're interviewing for it within the Department of Growth and Product Intelligence. So that's something you want to look up and make sure that you understand what it means. I did look it up, and basically it's a position where you gather information about how users are using your product, and you're using that to inform how you build and what projects you take on as a company and how you change your product and develop your product. So this is GitLab. A lot of that information is actually public for them because they're open source. And I was able to kind of find out more about product intelligence at GitLab. Another thing that I noticed was they use words like collaboration, feedback, analysis, data, learning once again. And those are things that I wanted to make sure that I highlighted within my skill set because those are skills that I have and they're skills that a lot of us have. So that's something that I also was keeping in mind. Other things they mentioned, collaborating. They mentioned collaborating with other testers and collaborating closely with product management. Do you have product management experience? Do you understand what they do? Business intelligence, once again. So it sounds like you're going to be working a lot about with how the direction of the business. Do you understand how quality affects business? Can you make the case for yourself as far as understanding how a company works? Can you point out stories that display that you know how a company works and that you can make a company better or more performant? Triage. Have you ever prioritized? Data. Do you like data? Do you gather information? Are you a natural resource searcher? You know, optimization. So they all kind of fall in line with each other. And another thing that I just kind of want to bring up very quickly is that this is kind of more of a move away from what I consider old school job descriptions. When I was coming up, they might say something like, we're looking for a self-starter that's professional and punctual and this thing and that thing and a bunch of kind of stodgy language. Now the companies have moved to growth mindset. How many of you are familiar with growth mindset? At least as a concept. So when you look at job descriptions and when you're doing behavioral interviews now, and when you're looking at company values, you'll notice that they're all aligning with growth mindset. So they'll start talking about learning. They'll be talking about refining your process, you know, overcoming obstacles, your ability to kind of grow as a human being, as a person, your ability to kind of navigate change and grow. So those are things you want to keep in mind as you do behavioral interviews, because they're all going to be kind of asking for the same thing and wanting you to highlight those same uh, growth mindset related skills. That and emotional intelligence, not as high as there were a few years ago. 2020, all they talked about was emotional intelligence. But now growth mindset is the thing. So you really need to kind of be aware. So here's what you do when you've looked through that job description. You're going to do additional research. So this is how you're going to choose the stories that you share for your behavior interview. My feeling, and this is what I do, I know what stories I'm going to share before I go to the interview. I do not let the question dictate my answer. I answer the question, but the questions are all fairly vague. They're about collaboration, they're about challenges you've overcome, they're about times you failed and times you've succeeded. So if you have a good 5 or 6 answers or stories at least, you should be able to answer almost any question they pose because most of your experiences are going to fit in to right into what they're going to ask. So you're going to be looking when you're looking on their at the information like that job description, you're going to be looking for any information you can find about their interview process and expectations, uh, anything that you can find out about your interview panel, any team specific writing, technical writing, blogs, company values. Company values are big. If you've got an interview, You need to get onto their career page and you need to read what those values are. That's also going to inform what stories you share. But once again, the values are going to be roughly the same. They're going to be around learning, they're going to be around community, they're going to be around some form of professionalism, but they're not going to call it professionalism. And you'll have those stories and you'll have kind of a library of stories. So when I looked at that GitLab job description, what I noticed is that it was filled with links. And when I opened the links, they had a interview expectation and process document that if I was really interviewing with them, I could have read through and I would have known their entire process. Um, I once looked up a company, and not only did they have their process, they actually told you what they were going to ask right there within their interview documentation. Some companies have blogs where they tell you what they're going to do. So you'll find this information like I have on the slide in a company blog, on the career page. A lot of companies have some form of social media, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube, where you can watch videos for people who work there. Take advantage of that. Your interview confirmation letter. I think Ashley mentioned word of mouth. Like, do you know people who work there? If you're on Women Who Code, hey, I have an interview with GitLab. Does anybody work for GitLab? I'd love to hear more about what your day to day is like. People here have been very kind and they've spoken to me. I'm sure they'll speak to anyone who'd ask. The company recruiter, don't be afraid to reach out. If they said, hey, we'll see you tomorrow at 2, reply and say, "Oh, I'm very excited about that. I can't wait. Uh, who will I be interviewing with? What can I look forward to? Is there anything you can share about your experience? Anything that you can do to gather information is going to be key in making you feel more prepared and be more prepared." So this is a samples of some of the information I found about GitLab, and this is all from just clicking in the links that were in that job description. The career handbook page, their values, collaboration, results, efficiency, diversity, iteration, transparency. Those are their values. They have the 10 reasons to work for GitLab. So that gave me some information about their benefits and about their company culture. That's also a question I don't have to ask during the interview. So, what you don't want to be doing during an interview is asking questions that you could have Googled. You want to save it for something deep and impactful that will be memorable for you and them. So, you absolutely want to kind of look through and see what they have out there. They have their OKRs publicly available. So, you know what the goals are. And I was able to look specifically for the company, the business intelligence um, um, page, and look at their OKRs and figure out what their goals were for the year and for the quarter. So I know what their goals are and I can speak to those goals. So now that you have that information, you're going to take their values, the 6 values that they laid out, and you're going to create your STAR library. So those of you who are not familiar with STAR, STAR is a method for answering a behavioral based or culture fit interview question. The acronym goes for the situation, task, action, result, and reflection. Not everybody does that last R, but the reflection's important because if it's a bad story or a horror story, you absolutely want to make sure that you can tell them what you learned from the process, is especially if it was like a failure that you have to talk to. And you want to show that you have that, once again, that growth mindset and that you can speak to those things. Yes, the R is kind of, the extra R is new. It used to be just plain regular STAR, but the reflection is kind of a new development, and I think it's a good one. You should be able to give a STAR answer in about 2 minutes. And that's why you want to just at least have your answers in mind. So what I normally do, and this doesn't have to be done on paper, I just wanted to show you my process. You're going to create kind of like a scenario in your head where you can go through these 6 values that they have, and you're going to think of a way that you exhibit those values. And you're going to speak to that situation or that scenario using the STAR method. So think about a time you collaborated, and you're going to think, okay, well, I started a, I noticed that at my job, we did not have a way to bring in engineers from diverse backgrounds. I believe in lifelong learning, so I wanted to make sure that other folks had the opportunities I did. I spoke with my manager and with my coworkers, and I was allowed to create an apprenticeship program for my company. I found a boot camp that we partnered with. We interviewed a group of students and we selected 2, and I was the project manager for 5 weeks while we completed that project. They created an internal tool for us, and they gained valuable skills. And I was given the opportunity to learn about what it's like to be a project manager. I learned a lot, and we're looking forward to doing it again next year and hopefully opening up the process to more boot camp students and a diverse group of students. So that's one way that I could answer that question. I collaborated with people, I completed a task, we got a positive result. And here we are, and I reflected on it. So just think about doing that for all 6 things or as many values as you see for any company that you're going to be interviewing for. Let's see. So, and another thing that you'll notice that once again, these 6 skills, except for diversity and inclusion, are growth mindset kind of related skills and emotional intelligence related skills. So that's another thing just to make sure that you notice that that exists, that correlation exists as you look at company values. This is another way that you can do it. You can do it by mind map. If you're somebody who likes to think abstract and not using whole sentences all the time, you can just on a piece of paper do a quick mind map using the values, the 6 values again, and just think, why am I a good fit? Why do my values match theirs? And then you once again create some scenarios and think about the skills that you have in scenarios that match, that give you that insight and give them the insight. Another thing to think about, make sure that all of your scenarios are not from the same job. You want to give them another way to see your career progression and journey. So maybe you choose one from school or boot camp. You choose one from your volunteer life. You choose one from your current job. You choose one from the far past. Give them a more of a full picture of who you are as a person and as a worker. So now you're ready for your interview. This is what I do when I'm interviewing and I am doing it virtually. I set up my desktop so that I have a paper for notes, I can see my interviewers, and I have a timer. So the timer runs, I use a little app, but you can use just the clock that's on your desktop, that's normally at the top right of your desktop, because I want to make sure that my answers are under 2 minutes. I have a tendency to ramble, so I want to make sure that I don't run out of time or speak too long to any subject. I want to make sure that my notes are available, and I'll let them know, do you mind? I'm taking notes. Nobody's ever said no. They generally like that you're listening and that you're making sure. What are you taking notes on? Of course, anything that they say that's key, but you definitely want to make sure that you have the names of anybody that's on your interview panel and what they do, so that you have that and you can research it later if you want. And you have that information for any thank you note that you intend to send. I also keep some virtual post-its so I can remind myself to slow down, to smile, to use the STAR method, to take breaths, anything that I need. You can have multiple post-its if you want to have post-its that share whatever the scenarios that you need to kind of keep in your memory. Yes, Ashley, a bottle of water is absolutely key. So that way you have a moment to think things through or you don't start coughing. Um, Anybody else? Let's see, what else do we keep? Yeah, so this is what I normally keep. I try to keep things pretty bare bones so I don't get distracted, but this is at least the minimum. And this is something that you could probably replicate in person. You could just have a notebook with a post-it on it and just make sure that you're writing down appropriate notes. Let's see. So hopefully you've done well on that interview, but your behavior is still being assessed. So now they've had the interview, they're probably going to speak amongst themselves, but you still have time to make an impression. So, one thing that you can do is, of course, send a thank you note a day or two later so that you remain fresh in their mind. If they're interviewing 10 people, you want to make sure they've seen your name at least twice. If anything stumped you in the interview, if you didn't have a good answer or something needed more thought, feel free to reference that in your thank you letter. When you're saying thank you, oh, um, you asked me a little bit about business intelligence. I didn't quite have a great answer, but I've done some research. It's very interesting. And then you can share something. So you can always try to recover if things didn't go exactly as planned. And also, this is a good time to answer any objections. During one of my apprenticeships, I actually asked, is there anything that would keep you from hiring me as an apprentice? And they were honest about some skills that they weren't sure I had. And when I wrote my thank you note, I was able to highlight ways I've used those skills in the past. And even if you don't have those skills, you can say, oh, I picked up this book or I'm reading from this person. And it gives you another chance to share those skills. So that was my primer. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just let me know where you met me from because I get a lot of weird solicitations on there. So if you mention Women Who Code, I know exactly what you're from, and I'm happy to link up with you. And that should be the end if we're recording. Thank you so much. I am going to move on to